We all have things about ourselves that we don't like, some things that we might even hate. And those things, we call them our weaknesses, and we put a giant sticker of shame on them. Your weaknesses are those flaws that you wish that you could fix, that you wish that you could hide from everyone else. Maybe it's your procrastination, maybe it's your need for validation, or maybe it's that voice that's in your head and is telling you that you're not good enough. And all you are thinking about is that if I could just fix this one thing about me, if I could just get rid of this one thing about me, I'll finally be good enough like the others. I'll finally be happy. But what you don't understand is that that flaw that I'm so desperately trying to erase by ignoring it is not just becoming a part of me, but it's ending up running my life, and it's running it in the worst way possible. Let me explain. When I bury my weaknesses, when I suppress them and I don't want to see them and I push them down, they don't just disappear because I have decided to ignore them or because I have tried to hide them so well. What they do is that they go so deeply down into my subconscious that they start pulling the strings. Carl Jung called this the shadow self. And the shadow self is the part of you that holds all the things that you have rejected about yourself, your flaws, your weaknesses, your insecurities, your fears, and even the emotions that you think that you are not allowed to feel. Emotions like anger, jealousy, or shame. And here's where it gets tricky. When you suppress these parts of yourself, they don't just disappear, but they go into your subconscious and they start running the show in ways that you don't even notice. For example, you might pick apart other people's success and you call it luck or privilege because it's easier for you to do that than to confront the fact that you're pushing down, which is the idea that why am I not going after my own goals? You stay in relationships or you stay in friendships that drain you because the idea of being alone feels scarier than being unhappy. You might find yourself constantly busy. You're running errands, you're picking up extra work, you're saying yes to tasks that you don't even want to do because slowing down for you, it will mean that you need to sit and confront the uncomfortable thoughts that are in your head. You might criticize yourself in front of others and you're making jokes about yourself and your flaws because it feels safer to beat yourself up before anyone else has the chance to. The shadow self doesn't want to ruin your life. What it wants is to be seen. But when you constantly ignore it, it has no choice but to show up in your life in sneaky and destructive ways. And listen, I've been there, but the good news is that you can fix it. When I started acknowledging my shadow, when I said, you know what, there's some things that I have been suppressing, there's some things I have been ignoring and not giving them any of my attention. Let me figure them out so they can stop acting up. So when I did that, when I faced those parts of myself that I have been running from, they stopped controlling me. Instead, they became a very powerful tool that are helping me to become more self-aware, more accepting of myself, and more of my whole self because I'm able to see both my strengths and my weaknesses. And so I was able to grow in ways that I never thought that it was possible. And in this video, I'm going to show you why embracing your weaknesses is the ultimate power move. And by the end of this, you will also stop seeing them as something that you need to fix, and you will start seeing them as the key to creating a life without you standing in your way. So let's get started. Hi guys, I'm Andriana and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my mission is to guide you through every step of the self-improvement journey from A to Z. Right now we're in phase 1 of self-discovery. We have already talked about finding your core values, finding your passion, and now we're in a new series of understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Today I'm talking about something pretty uncomfortable: your weaknesses. Most people avoid this topic because it feels like they're admitting defeat. But what if I told you that if you actually do the thing that so many people avoid, if you decide to face and embrace your weaknesses, then this could hold the secret to your transformation. In today's video, I'm going to speak about the psychology behind why you resist your flaws, the hidden power that they hold, and how by shifting your mindset, you can actually unlock a whole new level of growth and a whole new level of you. So let's get started. First of all, let's start with the big question. Why do you avoid your weaknesses? Why is it so hard to admit them, even to ourselves? The answers are not obvious, but they're actually deeply rooted in fear, in conditioning, and the illusions that you have built around yourself and your self-image. So let's break it down. First of all, we have the good old fear of judgment. Most of us, we grew up learning that showing a weakness is dangerous because maybe we were teased in school, maybe we were criticized by a parent, maybe you were bullied by your friends or you were belittled by them. So somewhere along the line, you decided, you know what, it's safer for me to hide my flaws and it's safer for me to wear a mask of strength and confidence, even if it's not real. But here's the reality to that. Judgment says nothing about you and it says everything about the person that is doing the judging. Why do we even fear judgment in the first place? Judgment is not a giant bear that is gonna eat us. It's not a knife that can hurt us. It's not a giant python that is trying to choke us. It's not a spider that is going to poison us. But yet, most people on this planet Earth, we share the same fear with everybody else, the fear of being judged. And the reason for that is that judgment feels like rejection. And on a primal level, as humans, we are wired to crave acceptance because for our ancestors, being part of the group, it meant that we're gonna survive. So standing out as different and standing out as flawed could mean exile. So even though you're no longer living in a cave, your brain still interprets criticism as something that is life-threatening and that is something that is dangerous. The truth about judgment is that people who criticize you are often projecting their own fears on you. So if you think about it, somebody that is deeply insecure, they will go and try to find flaws in others because it temporarily makes them feel better about their own flaws. So you have to understand that their judgment is not about you, but it's about their inability to face themselves. So for me, when I was going through that, I said, you know what? The next time somebody judges you, ask yourself, try to become aware and ask yourself, what does that reveal about them? Instead of internalizing their words, actually reflect how their criticism might stem from their own fears and their own insecurities. Once you see that the people who are quick to judge others are the ones that are more likely to struggle with self-esteem issues. And why is that? It's because tearing others down is easier than confronting their own weaknesses and their own insecurities. So the next time you feel judged, instead of reacting defensively, say, you know what, you might be right. And watch how quickly the power of their judgment dissolves. Because owning your flaws will disarm them because they can attack what you have already accepted. You are no longer in fear of their judgment and it means nothing to you. So the fact that you have accepted your potential flaw, it will show back to them the fact that they haven't accepted theirs. The second reason is the myth of perfection. And perfection is one of the biggest lies that has been sold and is keep getting sold to us. You know that perfection is a lie. You know this on a logical level, but emotionally it's very hard to let go of this idea. And why is that? Is because you have been sold the myth of perfection and you have been sold of this myth since you were a child. And nowadays with social media, this is expanded and magnified. So you scroll through Instagram and you see influencers with perfect skin. You see people having their dream vacations and their perfect lives. And it's easy for you to think, you know, if I could just fix my own life, if I could just fix myself and hide the parts of myself that I don't like, then I will be good enough like them. But here's what you don't see. The influencer with the perfect skin is wearing layers of makeup and using filters. The person with the perfect vocation might be drowning in not so perfect credit card debt. The happy couple is fighting behind closed doors. So what you are comparing yourself isn't even real. It's a curated highlight reel. Nobody wants to show their weaknesses and their vulnerabilities because imperfection doesn't sell. Perfection sells. And everybody is selling this dream of having a perfect life and then you're gonna have this peace and happiness, but it's so wrong. And I'm not telling you that trying to become better and to improve yourself, having goals the same as those influencers might have, is wrong. I'm just telling you that you should not compare yourself to something that looks so perfect, because when you see the reality of this, you start to put less importance and starting to put these influencers less on the pedestal than you do right now, and you start to see that in reality actually they're not as perfect as they show. So maybe for me, I can achieve what I want to achieve without being perfect. So this relates to the spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is when you think that all attention is on you. So similarly, you believe that your flaws are as visible to others as much as they are to you, but they're not. People are truly so absorbed in their own lives and their own problems and their own flaws that they barely notice yours. You have to understand that chasing perfection will always fail. Perfection is unattainable because it is subjective. What one person will admire, another person will criticize. So if you spend your life trying to mold yourself into what you think others want, you will never feel whole because you are chasing a moving target. So for me, what I did was to stop asking myself, how can I become more perfect? How I can appear more perfect? But instead, I started asking, how can I be more authentic? Because authenticity is what it's truly magnetic. I've heard someone say that the highest vibration is not love, that there's something actually beyond that, and that is authenticity. Authenticity is the total acceptance and unconditional love of the self. So obviously this is going to be magnetic. People are drawn to those who embrace their imperfections and embrace their whole self because it gives them permission to embrace their own and accept their own whole self. Another reason why we have trouble embracing our weaknesses is because vulnerability feels like a weakness. The thing about vulnerability is that you have been conditioned to see it as a weakness and to see it as something that opens you up to attack. But here's the paradox. I had to learn this on my own, that vulnerability is actually a strength. And there's a power that comes with it, because when you admit your flaws, you take control of them and no one can use them against you because you have already owned them and accepted them. Also, vulnerability creates connection. If I think about the people that I admire the most, they are not the ones that are pretending to have it all together. They are the ones who are honest, who are relatable, and they are real. Spiritually, vulnerability is seen as the gateway to growth, because it is the willingness to be seen as you are, without any pretense, without any mask. When you embrace vulnerability, you align with your true self, which is infinitely more powerful than any facade that you could create. Another reason is the comfort zone of denial. Avoiding your weaknesses feels safe because denial is this cozy blanket that it shields you and it protects you from any discomfort. But the thing is that growth doesn't happen in comfort. The reason why we stay in denial is because admitting that we have a weakness, it feels like we are admitting defeat, because it forces you to confront and face the parts of yourself that don't align with the image that you want to project to the outside world. But everything comes at a cost. And so denial comes with the cost of stagnation, because you can't improve what you refuse to acknowledge. So for me, I started to think of my weaknesses as blind spots. They're not failures automatically, but they're opportunities. And the sooner I identified them, the sooner I was able to start working on them. Here, it really helps to self-reflect and to be able to sit with yourself and to journal about that. Because the sooner you get to know your whole self, the sooner you will start to find that self again and you're gonna start accepting it. Things like that for me personally, they build a lot of self-awareness, but not only that, but also a lot of self-trust. And then with self-trust, when you have that foundation of self-trust, you then have an incredible foundation of self-confidence. If you find that you have a hard time doing this self-reflection on your own, you can always ask someone that you trust to give you some honest feedback about your blind spots and your weaknesses. And I know it's uncomfortable and we don't want to listen to our flaws coming from our loved ones, but this is the fastest way to grow. One of the biggest reasons of why we don't want to face our weaknesses is because of the fear of change. Admitting your weaknesses means that you have to change, right? And change is scary. It's of course easier for us to stay in the familiar, even if that's a flawed pattern, than it is to venture and go into the unknown. But there is a cost with staying the same. Well, yeah, change is uncomfortable, sure. Staying the same is costly, because when you avoid your weaknesses, you miss out on the opportunities to grow, to connect, and to evolve. And I remember when I was going through this realization, I decided that I needed to start to see it differently. So instead of fearing change, I had a bigger fear for something else. I started to fear regret. I always feared regret, so when I realized that regret is scarier than change, then that shifted my perspective, because I told myself, imagine looking back on your life and realizing that you never reached your potential because you were too afraid to try. I mean, how silly is that? And ever since then, I used that feeling of regret to push me towards change. And now change for me is something beautiful. It's something that is refreshing, that is a fresh start. So I am excited and I'm looking forward to it, because I know if something doesn't change, it's gonna die. Now let's see the hidden power of weaknesses. And I know it sounds paradoxical and against our urge to run away from our weaknesses. But what if you didn't run away from your weaknesses and you didn't try to avoid or hide them, and instead you run towards them? You run towards embracing them and accepting them. Have you ever thought that this could actually be the key to unlocking your potential? First of all, weaknesses reveal your blind spots. Your weaknesses work like a mirror. They reflect back to you the parts of you that they need more growth, they need healing, they need development. So basically, without them, how can I even know what is holding me back? I mean, think about it. If I struggle with procrastination, okay, it's easy to label myself as lazy and to spiral into self-criticism, but procrastination is not laziness, it's avoidance. The real question here is, what am I avoiding? Maybe it's fear of failure or fear of success, because that's a thing, or maybe it's fear of the unknown, because stepping into new territory feels overwhelming. The thing is that your weaknesses are always pointing you towards something deeper, because they are like arrows and they're asking you, listen, slow down and reflect. So for me, what I asked myself to reflect on when I was going through that, I said, the next time I catch myself struggling with something, whether that's procrastination, whether that's self-doubt, whether that's overthinking, I need to pause and ask, what is this trying to teach me? What am I avoiding here? Often, what we label as a weakness is just a symptom of an unresolved emotion or fear we have. So for me, I used to struggle with overthinking, and I will analyze every decision to the point of exhaustion, and I was thinking that this was a sign that I was thorough. But deep down, it wasn't thoroughness, it was fear. It was fear of making the wrong choice. It was fear of judgment if things didn't go as planned. And once I realized that, I stopped fighting my overthinking and I started addressing the root cause. I started addressing the fear beneath it. And that's the thing with your weaknesses. They're not here to punish you, but they're here to guide you. Also, weaknesses build emotional intelligence. Acknowledging your flaws takes a lot of humility, and that humility is the foundation of emotional intelligence. When you look yourself in the eye and you say, this is where I struggle, something incredible happens to you. You become self-aware. And self-awareness is the key to everything, to your growth, to your relationships, and to your success. Because when you understand yourself, you are better equipped to understand others. Your flaws are what makes you authentic. They are what makes you relatable. And they remind others and yourself that you are human and that everybody goes through stuff. Spiritually, weaknesses are often seen as blessings in disguise because they're here to humble you, they're here to ground you and to remind you of your humanity. They strip away your ego and bring you closer to your authentic self. Another thing that weaknesses give us is that they create resilience. Because if you think about it, when has life ever made you stronger during the easy moments? Growth happens when you're uncomfortable. Growth happens when you're pushed to your limits and when you have to face things that you would rather not. Your weaknesses are life's way of handing you the tools to get tougher and to get smarter. They teach you how to adapt, how to find solutions, and how to keep going even when it feels impossible. Without them, you will never be able to know how strong you really are. The reason why challenges matter is because every time you confront a weakness, you're building resilience. You are proving to yourself that, I'm capable of more than what I thought I could. And that resilience, it will spill over into other areas of your life. It will spill into your work, your relationships, and even in your relationship with yourself and how you see yourself. So for me, when I was going through different situations that they felt unbearable at the moment and really stressful, because at that moment you're thinking, I can't do that, I don't know how to handle that. But actually, when you get out of it and you allow the situation to be a teacher and to learn the lesson that it was trying to give you, then when you look back at it, now I'm thinking, look at me. I went through this and I have survived that, and not only that, but I also came out of the other side as a winner and in a better situation and in a better version of myself. An important thing that weaknesses do is that they teach you self-compassion. And this is something very key because your weaknesses aren't just here to help you grow, but they're here to teach you kindness. Kindness towards yourself. The reason why self-compassion matters is because most of us, we are our own worst critics. We beat ourselves up for not being good enough, for not being smart enough, for not being successful enough. But think about how you will treat a friend or someone close to you that is struggling. Would you sit and criticize them, or would you actually offer understanding and encouragement and believe in them? You know what? I believe you can do that. Your weaknesses are an opportunity to extend that same kindness to yourself. Self-compassion is the foundation of healing. You can't grow from a place of self-hatred. You're not here listening to this video because you hate yourself. You're here because you love yourself and you want to help yourself grow and heal and become better and understand yourself more. And that's why you're here. It's not because you hate yourself. If you hated yourself, you wouldn't be here. So for me, every time I will catch myself being harsh towards me, I will pause and I will ask myself, will I say this to someone that I love? If the answer is no, then I don't say that to myself either. The key takeaway here is that your weaknesses are not here to hold you back, but they're here to push you and to propel you forward. They show you what are your blind spots. They show you how to build emotional intelligence and how to create resilience. And also they teach you self-compassion and how to be kinder to yourself. So the parts of you that feel broken are the parts with the most potential for growth. So you need to embrace them and you'll discover in them a strength that is far better than perfection. You might be wondering, okay, how do I embrace my weaknesses? How do I reframe my perspective and how do I see my weaknesses as a superpower? So let me start with something you probably don't want to hear. The very thing that you hate most about yourself, it could be the same thing that could be the key to your greatness. And think about that for a second. The insecurity that keeps you up at night, the flaw that you try to hide from everyone, that could be your secret weapon. But you have spent so long running from it, you have spent so long pretending it doesn't exist, that you have missed the lessons that it's trying to teach you. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the parts of yourself that you have been avoiding and why those parts might just be the best thing that have ever happened to you. First of all, you need to see that weaknesses are the universe's wake-up call. You know those moments when life forces you to stop because things are falling apart and you are left staring at your reflection and you're wondering, how did I get here? Those moments are not a coincidence. Your weaknesses show up when you are out of alignment. They are the universe's way of saying, you know what, hey, slow down. There's something that you need to address here. But instead of listening, most people try to numb it. You scroll on social media, you binge watch Netflix, or you throw yourself into more work. You basically do anything to avoid looking at the messy parts of yourself. But here's the thing, if you don't face your weaknesses, they will keep showing up. They will become louder and louder until you have no other choice but to face them. I mean, it's the same thing like driving with a check engine light on. You can ignore it for a while, but eventually it will break down. Your car will break down. And your weaknesses are the same. They're not here to destroy you, but they're here to guide you back to yourself. They're here to warn you that something is not right. There's some misalignment in the way that you are doing things. So put your awareness on that. Your weaknesses make you magnetic. The truth that most people don't realize that people aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to authenticity. Think about the people that you admire the most. Are they the ones who pretend to have it all together? Or are they the ones who are honest about their struggles? The ones who say, you know what, I'm not perfect, but I'm trying, and this is what I'm trying to do to become better at this. They are the ones that say that I accept myself fully with my weaknesses and my strengths. And when you do the same, when you own your weaknesses, you give others permission to do the same, to own their weaknesses too. And that's how you build real connection. That's how also you become magnetic, not by being flawless, but by being real. So vulnerability strengthens relationships and it builds this self-trust. So your flaws aren't something to hide. There's something to share because they are the bridge that's gonna connect you to other people. A big thing that you need to understand is that weaknesses are hidden strengths in the wrong context. Your biggest weaknesses are often strengths that are being misused or they are misunderstood. What I mean is that, for example, are you too sensitive or are you deeply empathetic? Are you indecisive or are you thoughtful and deliberate? Are you stubborn or are you determined and resilient? That same trait that feels like a weakness in one situation, it can be a strength in another. So it's not about always changing who you are, but it's about finding the right environment where your weakness becomes your superpower. A big thing about weaknesses is that they force you to evolve. As I said before, growth doesn't happen when things are easy. It happens when things are uncomfortable, when you're stretched to your limit, when you're forced to face the parts of yourself that you would rather honestly ignore. But you need to see weaknesses like weights at the gym. Sure, they're heavy, they're hard to lift, and they challenge you, but every time you pick them up and you do your reps with them, you get stronger. So here's the thing. What if the challenges that you face right now aren't random? What if they're actually handpicked by you, and they were handpicked by you before you even showed up in this life? A lot of spiritual teachings say that your soul knew what it needed to grow, and it actually chose the struggles that you're going through right now. Think of it like leveling up in a game. You're not gonna pick up the levels that you already passed because they're boring. You already done them, you already passed them, they are expected. So you're going to choose the ones that are going to test you, and they're going to make you better at the end of that level and give you more skills that you didn't have before. So every weakness, every insecurity, every why me moment that you have is not punishment. It's a chance, and it's a chance to grow and to evolve and to become who you were always meant to be. Imagine this, before you were born, yourself was like, you know what, okay, let's learn patience in this life. Let's master self-worth. Let's figure out how to truly love. And then life handed you situations that would force you to practice those things. It's kind of wild, isn't it? But it's also very empowering, because if you see your struggles this way, it really flips the script, because you're not just surviving through them, through these tough times, but you're growing through them. And honestly, doesn't that make every challenge feel a little bit less heavy? Like, this is happening for me, not to me. My soul is literally learning its lesson. Now let's talk about the fight between ego versus the authentic self. One of the reasons why we avoid our weaknesses is because of our ego. The ego wants to protect us, and it says to you, if you admit this flaw, people will judge you. If you show this side of yourself, you are gonna lose respect. But the truth is that your ego is a liar. It's not protecting you, but it's actually trapping you. When you ignore your weaknesses, you're not just hiding from others, but you're hiding from yourself. And you can't grow and become your authentic self when you're living in denial. So your challenge here is to ask yourself, what am I afraid it will happen if I do own my weaknesses? And then ask yourself, what is the best thing that could happen if I face it? Weaknesses also teach you compassion. When you have struggled, you understand what it's like for others to struggle and to go through that. Your weaknesses make you more compassionate, they make you more patient and more understanding. If you think about it, the best teachers, the best leaders, the best healers are the ones who have faced their own battle. They have learned through that, and they're teaching their lessons to other people that are going through that too, because they have been there and they get it. So your weaknesses don't just help you grow, but they give you the ability to help others grow too. And they turn your pain into purpose. A big thing to remember here is that weaknesses are temporary. When we're going through them, we don't realize that our weaknesses aren't permanent. They are not who you are. They are who you are right now. And every weakness can be improved, it can be adapted, or it can be reframed. But the process starts with one thing. It starts with acceptance. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. So weaknesses aren't forever, they're just a phase. They're this training that we go through that is helping us to build the skills that we need for the next version of ourselves. So the takeaway here is that your weaknesses are only weaknesses if you let them stay that way. So let me leave you with this. Your weaknesses are not here to break you, but they're here to shape you. So the next time you feel ashamed of a flaw, you need to pause, you need to look at it, and you need to own it. And you need to ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? Because when you stop running from your weaknesses and you start embracing them, you unlock a level of growth, a level of strength and authenticity that most people never reach in their life. And that's where the magic happens, because the parts of yourself that you have been avoiding, they could be the exact pieces that you need to complete the puzzle of who you're meant to be. And remember, it's not about fixing everything overnight. Growth takes time, and so does self-acceptance. Your subconscious mind will need some time to adjust to these new beliefs. But every time you face a weakness, you take one step closer to becoming the strongest and the most authentic version of yourself. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you and I love you, and I'll see you in the next video.